You can start.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening again. We're moving from the Marathas now. We had planned this session originally had Pramod Kapoor, who unfortunately had to drop out because he was indisposed. So we were going to actually discuss his book, 1946, The Last War of Independence, about which Sanjeev Sanyal spoke a little. But you saw that movie in between, which highlights the role of the Royal Indian Navy. So the original idea was to frame two books of Admiral Gupta, 1971, and Pramod Kapoor, with Sandeep in my chair. But now we have promoted Sandeep up, and we're going to discuss Sandeep's book too. But the theme of the session remains the same, the Navy and the nation. And why? Because we are going to discuss on the theme. We've arrived at 1946 and freedom. Now this is independent India's Navy. And all of you, a lot of you would know if if you asked a common person outside, they'd say who led the Indian Army in 71 war, most people would know. But if you ask them who led the Navy in the 71 war, as a quiz question, you would have lots of blank answers. Ramesh, I'm not talking of you. So, the reason is that very few people believe that the Navy had any role to play in that war. Quite to the contrary, the Navy played a hugely significant role in the eventual outcome that happened. And we are proud that we have two people who have written about that. Admiral Gupta's book, Guardians of the Sea, is about the overt action, the Bangladesh attacks, then attacks on East Pakistan from the INS Vikrant and the Eastern Fleet. And Sandeep Unnithan's book, Operation X, is about the covert war, and I'll let him do the explaining as to why it was hugely significant. So now, ladies and gentlemen, before that, I must acknowledge in front of all of you that we have some people here who actually were a part of that war. Apart from Admiral Gupta, who led the strikes into East Pakistan, we're talking of 71 war. I must recognize the gracious presence of Admiral Shekhawat, who commanded a submarine in that war and who is with us. Admiral I.C. Rao, Commodore Bada, all of those people who were some part or the other in that war. So thank you very much, sirs. So with that, Gigi sir and Sandeep, welcome to the. I don't think any of you need introduction. I'll begin with you, sir. So this theme is about the Navy's contributions, and I think the 1971 war stands as the Navy's finest hour. Even so, public attention is on the spectacular Karachi attacks. For a long time, we didn't know what happened in the East till your book came out. So, not only did you begin on the very same 4th December, in fact, the morning of the 4th December, launching your attacks from Vikrant. But can you give us a very brief background as to how all that came together? Because just about 6 months before that, the aircraft carrier was hardly ready. So you mobilized them, you got them ready, and you attacked. So very quickly, how did that happen?
Do you want me to go straight to the attack?
Straight to the attack and then do a bit of flashback if you wish, sir.
Well, let me begin by saying that Vikrant was a limping ship. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Vikrant was a limping ship and been laid off into the docks for over a year. From mid.
You could take this.
So it was laid off for over a year, and the squadron was disembarked, and we were given no priority after that because it was recognized by everyone that Vikrant would never sail again. She had a very major defect, and she was going to take at least 3 or 4 more years to get operational, if at all. If the Navy was able to spend that much money in getting a new boiler and ordering it from overseas, and fitting it right down below the deck. So accordingly, the squadrons were disembarked, the two squadrons, and then they lost their importance. They took on a training role. They were denuded of the experienced pilots. They were denuded also of aircraft, as the aircraft began to drop out for lack of spares. The start of in July, August of '71, that is when Bangladesh was in the offing, and East Pakistan and was creating a lot of problem. So Vikrant was sailed out after 3 or 4 weeks of sea trials, after laying off for over a year, as I mentioned. And what I knew was, when I was commanding the squadron in Goa, that I was ordered to bring 6 aircraft to Madras, Chennai, and operate and humor Vikrant at sea, because Vikrant was without aircraft. She had a new crew, totally new crew, and they never had operated airplanes before. And so it was an absolute new ship, new crew, and I myself had only I had about 2 or 3 experienced pilots. Mike Bada is sitting there, he was one of them. And others were all new pilots, 18 or 20 of them, who had never been on deck before and just qualified with their wings, and they were really were too new. So that was the situation when Vikrant sailed out, and I was told to bring as many aircraft as possible, up to 6, and I only managed to get 3 aircraft because there was no aircraft available. So that was the start. And then to cut the story short, we had 25 flying days in total, unplanned and without diversion airfield, quite often. 25 days we had to prepare for war. In that period, we were 15 pilots, all experienced guys who had been with me before, and got from 3 aircraft, we were 18 aircraft. You can imagine how much importance was given to the Navy and the aviation at that stage, and foreign exchange was generated almost overnight, and aircraft spares began to arrive. So that was the state in which, in 5 months, we were practically living on 3 and 4 aircraft. And just 25 flying days, you can imagine, the aviators who are present here would know 25 days is nothing. But because my pilots had operated as a team before, and because they were all experienced deck pilots, so it didn't take them long to get back. But equally, the hard work was on the ship side, because from not operating any aircraft, they actually began to get very operational, and it was a very good team that was set up by, and I think the commanding officer Grant would get a lot of praise for that, because he was a very good commanding officer. I mean, I've seen so many commanding officers on the ground. He was the non-aviator, and he was among the best. So we worked as a team, and we had a lot of problems. Radars would not work in the carrier. We had no aids in Seahawk aircraft apart from your watch and your speed. And so and then we had problems with the lifts. When the lift would not operate, no aircraft could land or take off. And similarly, we had problems all along the way, but we were just lucky. At one time, we were all ordered to ditch 8 aircraft, but fortunately, just the last moment, we managed to get the lift up. So this was the sort of state in which Vikrant was operating, limping all the way through just 14 knots. And then the speed required of the carrier was 25 knots. That is the design speed, and that is because the Seahawks were operating the jet aircraft, and they required minimum 24.5 knots to get airborne with full weapon load and full fuel. So that was the state, and so we learned to make compromises everywhere. We either flew with less fuel or we flew with less armament, but we carried out the work. And on the 4th, we launched 8 aircraft to strike Cox's Bazar, and another 4 aircraft were airborne to give air defense. in case of enemy aircraft coming to attack them.
Sir, I'll just, because we've come to 4th December, and there's this wonderful way in which you're built up over 6 months from being nearly out of action now to getting ready for war. Sandeep, at the same time, in the same part of the world, there is parallel action. There's preparations for this overt action going from April, May onwards by navies, by the King Emperor, by the King Cobra, by the Emperor, by Sammy and everyone else, without the other part of the Navy knowing, for one of the most significant covert actions. This audience needs to know why Operation X was so significant. So why I go back to him for the next question. You please tell us. Let's do this in a parallel narrative.
So, Srikanth, thanks for having me here. It's a great honor to be here and to share the stage with you and Admiral Gupta. So, Operation X is something that the Indian Navy, the Directorate of Naval Intelligence came up with in April of 1971, where it begins with 8 Pakistani submariners who defect to India. They come across, they want to fight in they're very upset with what's going on in East Pakistan, and they want to fight the Pakistani military that's occupying them. And these 8 submariners become the nucleus of a very unique organization called Naval Commando Operations X. And it's a very small outfit. It's within naval intelligence itself. There's a small little setup called Naval Commando Operations X, which is set up for this covert operation. And it's so secret that my father is here, by the way. He was part of DNI during the war, 1971. Hi, Dad. He just got back from Antarctica, I must say that. He was there in Antarctica last month. He sailed to all the 7 continents. So, yeah. Full marks to you, Dad. You're my role model. So, well, my father was part of the DNI during the 71 war. It was so secret that even he didn't know about the existence of this thing, small little covert outfit with, Commander Kapil. And so when Admiral Roy wrote that book in 1996, War in the Indian Ocean, I read the chapter on the Mukti Bahini problem. And I asked Dad, I said, Dad, did you know anything about this Mukti Bahini problem? Dad said, I still remember we woke up one day somewhere in 1971 and we found that all the Bengali-speaking naval officers had vanished. No one knew where they went. And there's this friend of mine, Commander Kapil, you give him a call. I heard he was jumping around with all these movies. So, that is the beginning of that story. And to answer the question, that this Navy, it created this small little outfit, starting with these 8 Pakistani submariners. And that organization grew to 540 naval commandos. And the interesting thing is, Srikanth, that despite the fact that India did not have a special forces unit like the Marine Commandos that they have today, that was in fact set up after the war, it was a recommendation after 71. They went on to train 540 of these Mukti Bahini naval commandos. These Mukti Bahini naval commandos carried out some of India's largest special forces operations in August. That's 4 months before the war began. On one night, they attacked 4 ports inside East Pakistan, sinking, disabling, destroying something like 22 ships, merchant ships. And this is an operation that is almost unimaginable because it was set up with such a small group of officers and men. You had 10 diving instructors from the diving school in Cochin. You, of course, had my co-author, Captain Samat. He was the man on the ground in Fort William, Kolkata. You had the Director of Naval Intelligence, Admiral Vicky Roy, and of course, the Emperor Charles. Admiral Nanda. He never drove a Lambretta scooter, I can tell you. But I think he's the most remarkable Navy chief, and it's a sad thing that we've never acknowledged his contribution to the war in 1971. Had it been anyone else, we would not have seen the modern Indian Navy. But for Admiral Nanda, I will of course come back to that. Later, I'm jumping. But this little covert outfit carried out operations for 4 or 5 months. If you read this book, the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare,
Yeah.
which became a movie recently about a year back. Operation X was our Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. They were doing all kinds of things. They were converting harbor craft into mine layers. They were attacking ships inside East Pakistan. They were launching combat swimmers, hundreds of them. Literally, the operation, one of those operations under X was called Cloudburst, which meant that they were raining commandos into East Pakistan to attack merchant shipping. And this is an operation that nobody in the country knows about except for the Prime Minister, the Navy Chief, and maybe the Chief of the RMAW.
Yeah.
It's a very, very small, need-to-know basis thing. So, which is why never underestimate the Indian Navy, right? They are like submarines. You will just see a periscope sticking out of the water, but under the water there is this huge, gigantic submarine that's, you know, kicking and it's churning and it's planning, it's plotting. That is Operation X, and coincidentally it was the person on the ground, Commander Samant. Then Commander Samant was a submarine. He was the commissioning CEO of the INS Karanj. So
Yes, yes.
the last batch of Royal Navy commissioned Indian Navy officers, the first batch of Indian submariners, he planned, plotted this thing, and before the war began, Operation Hex had sunk or disabled 100,000 tons of shipping inside East Pakistan. This was economic warfare on a kind that India has never been.
So, sir, we'll do this shifting actions. That was the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. You are a part of gentlemanly warfare. They couldn't have chosen a better gentleman than you to launch the first attack, you know. And there you go, very nice person, and take off on the morning of 4th with the rest of your gang and start plummeting East Pakistan and all their ports. So describe that action to the audience. Many of them don't know what happened between the 4th and 12th and 13th.
I mentioned earlier that the aircraft had limitations because of the ship, and we could not exploit the aircraft fully, but we made up by numbers, and we made up by the fact that not a single aircraft fell off the next morning. We were 18 to start with the day and ended up the day with about 10 or 12, but by the overnight they worked on, and every morning we had 18 aircraft. So we had plenty of aircraft available, and plenty of keen pilots flying. So there was never a problem. And I must say that because of the experience of the pilots, firing was very accurate. I had a complete feedback after the war was over. I was given a helicopter and an armed escort, and I went to assess all the damages that had occurred, and I found that our firing was extremely accurate, either bombing, rocketing, or starting. At the same time, I did query a lot of people, civilians. They said we didn't kill a single civilian in any of those places. And despite the fact that in one particular case, I remember we had to attack in the middle of Chittagong city, right on top of the hill. There was a big massive building that actually turned out to be railways headquarters. But just 100 yards from there was a hospital, and I saw that as a lead aircraft, and I just warned everyone that be careful. There's a hospital there, bombs can fall short, 100 yards is nothing. But so we made sure that if anything went over it. But the bombing was very, very accurate, and I must say that I was also told that a lot of Pakistani soldiers were housed in that, and they all had escaped. They all were waiting to escape from one of the ships, which of course did not happen. And I think the large number of them must have surrendered in the end. So it was the easiest part of the whole 6 months really was the operational bit. Because we had the aircraft, we had as a crew, and the ship was ready to go, and everything was going very well, and just we could do nothing wrong. It was amazing.
I think he speaks like a true pilot. The easiest part was the flying and attacking. The rest was difficult. But just a quick follow-on, sir. You led the Seahawks, but the Elysees also did a great job. So you can just talk a bit about Ravi Dheer and his squadron's contribution.
Ravi Dheer was Lieutenant Commander Dhir was commanding the Elysee squadron. He's a classmate of mine. He was, and he led the Elysees, and most of the time they were flying at night because Seahawks had no radar, no navigation aids at all. And the Elysees were good at night flying. They had their own radar. They had a crew of 3, and by makeshift arrangements, they were even turned to bombers. So they did a fair amount of bombing over the airfield at night. Some got shot, some were hit, but they all returned to the ship, and some extensive repairs were carried out. And it's amazing that in one particular case, they had total electrical failure, and they had no aids to come back, and they were missing. So a relief aircraft was sent at night to find them, and they located them, and at the same time escorted them back. And total failure of, and never saved in the check the bullets. The 3 crew, bullets passed between the feet and the head, all 3 of them. And there were about 10 or 12 bullets right through the aircraft.
Sir, you need to hold it closer.
But not a single injury took place. And eventually that aircraft was also made operational after a week. So that was the easiest problem, and they did a marvelous job. They were not particularly hindered by Vikrant's speed very much, because they could still take off with full weapon load. And they were being slower aircraft, which is the jets that had this limitation.
So, ladies and gentlemen, before I take the next question to Sandeep, I would like you to just give. There's one wonderful, unique aspect of our Litfest. We brought it out earlier. Lots of other Litfest will have the Pulitzer and Booker Prize winners, but I think ours is that rare Litfest which has, at this point of time, a Mahavir Chakra on the stage. Kirti Chakra, Abhilash Tommy sitting there. A Veer Chakra in Admiral Shekhawat. Tomorrow, General Joshi is a Veer Chakra awardee. I don't think any Litfest, especially in its first year, would have got so many gallantry award winners together. So Sandeep, ultimately it's about people. I mean, we can talk, we can do Operation X, and we're all fascinated by what happened. But as he said, it was about people on Vikrant, and it is about people in Operation X. And it's the most crazy cast of characters thrown together. People who have all sorts of quirks about them. And you have described some of them in your book, The Operation X. So talk us a little bit about this set of people. I mean, each one of them unique in their own way, but how did they make Operation X possible?
Absolutely, it's always about people, Srikanth. It's equipment is just one part of the story. You have an Indian Navy. Had it been anyone else who had been at the helm, this is a debatable point. The Navy chief would have said, well, I have missile boats, but they don't have the range to go to Karachi. I have an aircraft carrier, it's got a crack in its boiler. Special forces, forget about it. We don't have a special forces. We just have a couple of divers. What can the Navy do? We'll sit out of this war as well, which is what they did in 1965. But you had someone there who was very deeply offended and hurt by the Pakistan Navy's attack on Dwarka in 1965, 60 years ago. And he takes it upon himself, saying that the Indian Navy is not going to sit out of this war, the next war. And he prepares for that war in 1971. That's Admiral S.M. Nanda, the Big Mac guy.
The Big Mac guy.
The Emperor Charles.
Yeah.
And he pushes the Navy with whatever little resources it had. They convert divers into special forces who then train commandos, naval commandos. They drag the missile boats where they tow them literally to Karachi and they let them loose so that they can come back, fire the missiles and come back. They patch up the boiler on the INS Vikrant and they launch it for airstrikes that Admiral Gupta led into East Pakistan, later Bangladesh. So this was a team that refused to take no for an answer. They would overcome all kinds of technical challenges. Under him, reporting to him was the Director of Naval Intelligence, Captain M.N. Roy. And he's one of the most enigmatic people that I've ever known. And he was the Director of Naval Intelligence, of course. And they said that he would never let his left hand know what his right hand was doing. He was like literally, I'm sure in the maternity ward when he was born, they would have said that Mubarako, Naval Intelligence Operative. You know? I mean, it's secret. He's like our Admiral Canaris. And then you had Commander Sammy Samant, again a very mysterious guy, and he's like really. I mean, I had a problem cooperating with him on the book because he, simply wouldn't talk. I had to actually go to Commander Kapil and say, sir, do you think, does Captain Samant believe that this operation is still on? Because he refuses to talk. So why do you want to know this? Well, this is beyond your thing. I will tell you this. So, it was that. It was a very strange cast of characters, but, guys who wanted to deliver results. And here I say that, a lot of how we would have reacted to today, you could have gone out and put a press release even before the operation had begun. So there are people who are very high caliber, fantastic naval officers who planned really well and then delivered results. And they kept it all to themselves right till the very end. Admiral Nanda never spoke about this operation. Captain Roy hinted at it in his book. And Commander...
He left breadcrumbs.
He left breadcrumbs for other authors to follow, like me. I'm deeply grateful to him. And Captain Samant waited for the last years of his life to actually put this book out. And I'm convinced that he would not have written this book if Admiral Nanda and Admiral Roy had been around, because they would be worried about being pulled up. So, again, if you go down to the diving branch as well, you have Commander Kapil, you have some very extraordinary people, very focused, very motivated, but they delivered results. They were not ones to say that, oh, I don't have this equipment, I don't have that, I can't do this, I can't do that. Never took no for an answer, delivered results, and look at the results that they delivered. One of the world's largest maritime covert warfare operations, that's Operation X, and of course the carrier operations, outstanding after the Second World War. The missile boat attacks of Karachi, the largest ship-to-ship missile attacks of all time. And this is a small service, the Cinderella service gets single-digit budgetary allocations and delivers these kind of results. And I don't think there has been such a comprehensive defeat of any navy post the 1945 Second World War as the Pakistan Navy had been defeated.
I'm glad you mentioned it. So, Gigi sir, exactly the same point. I have often felt that Operation X can be made into a great multi-starrer movie of lots of good men who would not take no for an answer. And that was exactly what was happening on Flat Top. You mentioned about Swaraj Prakash, a great guy. You and Ravi there together. Bhai Sahab Saxena as the XO. Bilu Chaudhary as the commandery. The younger Saxena as the navigator. Jacob, I think, for the direction. I mean, you had again a clutch of good people on the Flat Top who was making the impossible possible. Another movie there, sir? Oh, I didn't know the movie.
I don't know about the movie, but they were all selected few by the commanding officer himself. And they were well above average. That's exactly how it worked, because the teamwork was fantastic. I spent 12 years in the ground, and there are various capacities, 7 different tenures, but I've never seen a more cohesive group of officers, senior officers, and especially heads of departments, and down the line it goes, as such a great team as this one. I've seen they've always been fighting, heads of department all respect each other, they want a little bit more, and so on, somebody's got to give, somebody's got to take more, but this never happened. Never happened.
You didn't fight at all?
No, not at all. I mean, everybody was prepared to give his blood to anyone.
That's great.
Yeah, but what I want to tell you is that there were three days when the Seahawks could not fly. There was zero wind, and the wind was supposed to be.
Get closer.
The wind is added to your aircraft carrier speed to give you the requisite wind on deck. For 3 days we just couldn't fly, even with minimum load, because there was just no wind. As you went further up north towards the Bay of Bengal, the wind began to die down. So we had to sail out about beyond 150 miles to really get the wind, required minimum wind. So and many anxious moments were there. My own squadron, 8 aircraft were hit by bullets. In the beginning, we didn't know what was happening because we'd seen movies and so on, and you see aircraft flying in the Second World War. You find black splashes all around the cockpit, and this was actually happening to us. We didn't even know. We realized afterwards that they were all firing at us, and each time they fired nearer and the bullet got nearer us, the whole aircraft shook a little bit. So 8 aircraft were hit from my squadron, but they've all repaired. They all came back. 2 of them came back with shattered windscreens. They could not see in front. So they were brought back in formation to land the carrier. And this is never heard of before. This is the first time.
So see, I think by now you would have realized how matter of fact he says, no, we got some bullet injuries and things like that. I mean, that's the great flyer in him. So Sandeep, now for the question that I have meant to ask you many times, tell the audience what role did a condom factory in Trivandrum have to play in 71 war? Was it Trivandrum or 71?
Absolutely.
Trivandrum. What role did a condom factory in Trivandrum have to play in Operation X?
I'd love to say, please read the book.
No, they buy the book. Books available down below in the ground floor.
It's one of the most fascinating subplots, within Operation X. The fact is that they make this Jugaad limpet mine for our naval commandos who are trained by the diving branch of the Indian Navy, and they designed a soluble plug. Now, a soluble plug is something the size of this little bottle over here, which fits into the side of the mine. The diver goes and he puts it on the side of the ship. It's a explosive charge with about 3 kgs of high explosive. And when the soluble plug dissolves, the firing circuit is complete and the charge goes off. Boom. And there's a hole created in the side of the ship and the ship starts taking in water. That's a simple thing. Now the thing is that for the diver to swim there to the ship, these are surface swimmers, they're combat swimmers, so they put the limpet mine on their chest. These Bengali boys, very, very brave, exceptionally brave Mukti Bahini combat swimmers who swam to the ship. But in the process, when they were doing that, they discovered that the soluble plug started melting in the water, which meant that by the time he got to the ship and he put it there, the plug would melt in about 30 minutes or so. By the time he got to the ship and he planted it there, the diver's life was in danger because when the charge went off, he would be very close to it. So he said, we got to protect our boys. So they said, how do we do it? How do we prevent a soluble plug from, how do we waterproof it? And so someone came up with this bright idea, just put a condom around it. And so they started ordering these condoms, and Commander Samant was sitting in Fort William, and he was very alarmed that this little camp in a place called Palashi, the actual battlefield of Plassey, where Clive defeated Siraj-ud-Dawla, it was just a pure accident that they chose Plassey. They were actually training these boys there on the fields of Plassey. Captain Samant wondered, why the hell are these guys in the camp asking for so many condoms? What the hell are they doing there? And so it turns that this factory in Trivandrum, which was actually part of our family planning program, which began in the 1950s, which was to set up to build here, to manufacture condoms, then started getting super large quantity orders for this. And these boxes were being transported to Kolkata, and somebody in the factory would have been wondering, what is the Indian Army doing? What is with all of these? Why are we getting this? Are they preparing for war? Are they preparing for family planning? Or what are they doing? But that is the long answer to your short question.
Your story came much later. I wonder what Alec Badamsi would have done if he had heard of this when doing the Kama Sutra. And sir, in the life of many greats, the Mahavir Chakra, the Nausena Medal for rescuing an aircraft, one of the most dramatic parts of your life, and I must come a little to your personal aspect, is that there are people, the people who get married in different ways. There's some who get married going in a barat on a ghoda. There's some who go in a limousine. You're probably the rare man who flew down to your wedding in a fighter aircraft. The only man who please tell how did that happen? and this is in the middle of the 65 operation. So just tell them.
Let me start by saying that people think that Vikram didn't take part in 65 war, the Navy did not. Actually, Navy did take part in the first half of the 65 war. Second half, she was in dry docks. Vikram was in dry docks. So it was during this, I was going home by train from Cochin to Dehradun, where I hail from. And come back to Bharat, to Bangalore. On the 12th of May was wedding. 4th May, I was held up by the military police and said, you have to go back to Cochin. And I said, I just left Cochin yesterday and I just arrived here and I'm on my way up north. He said, no, this is your warrant to go back, your leave is cancelled. Now this was 4th of May, and 12th of May was the wedding. So like me, there was a good friend of mine also getting married, and he was to get married in Bombay, late Tipnis. So he was to go to Bombay and I was to come to Bangalore. Now I didn't know that the Fleet Admiral had accepted Tipnis's wedding reception, wedding invitation. So he told me that Tippy told me that why don't you get married in Bangalore, in Bombay, because the ship is bound to be in Bombay. The fleet commander has agreed to attend his wedding. So I sent a message through a helicopter, because we were not allowed to transmit anything. Through a helicopter, a telegram to my father-in-law to say that consider getting married in Bombay and not Bangalore on the same date. Because my father-in-law insisted that we will not change the date. That date will not change, and if he can't come, we will understand. But so I said, to make it happen, why don't we postpone? Why don't we do the wedding in Bombay? So he said, no, we will not move forward to Bangalore because everybody is around here. In any case, my parents and brothers and sisters already left Dehradun by train to come to Bangalore. So they could not be contacted either. So it so happened that because the Admiral had accepted Tippy's wedding in Bombay, now I thought that he's happy, he'll be going, but I don't think I can get married. So no matter how many telegrams I sent to my folks in Bangalore, they just won't change the date or the timings or the place of the venue. They said, every time they told me, we'll understand, if you can't come, we can understand. So I'm not sure whether they're very keen on the wedding at all. So now on the 12th May, on the 11th May, there was a party held in the wardrobe for the two of us, and we were literally had too much to drink. And that bar was kept open on Vikrant till 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night. So, and we were told that we will be given an aeroplane, and each one goes his way. I go to Bangalore and I get married and come back within 24 hours. So we did that. We were launched rather late, 2 hours late. Instead of getting launched at 6 in the morning, there was no wind. And I had to go on full tanks because Bangalore was over 400 miles. So but we waited. And this is one instance where you can't put any spare pilot in the spare aircraft either. So as Mike will tell you, there is always a spare aircraft manned fully in case the aircraft gets unserviceable, you jump out and hop into the other one. So all that was done, but finally, out of sheer desperation, they reduced my fuel, and the ship got nearer, about 370 miles or so, and Tippy was about 300 miles. So we both got launched with less fuel, and we were told that you have to come back within 24 hours. Now it turned out to be 20 hours, because by the time we left, it was 9 o'clock, and the Muhurtam was at 10 o'clock. So that means they didn't want to change the Muhurtam time also. So I landed up there, but before landing, I just tell them that I've come. I just buzzed over their house in Bangalore, and then they were all there at the airport, because the airport is, that time HAL airport is 15 minutes to get there. So, and then as my luck would have it, it was Muharram or some festival, and HAL was closed. And HAL, I had to land in HAL. So anyway, they allowed me to land, but there was no facilities available to receive the aircraft. And now my briefing, of course, always in Scotland has been that whenever you land somewhere, you have to fuel the aircraft first, otherwise the tanks collapse. Fuel the aircraft, you fold the wings, you push the aircraft into the hangar so that you are ready for the flight next day. So I had to do all this in the thick of summer, 12th of May, very hot, sweating profusely. And I'm not even sure my brother had turned up and all with my gear, because I only get my aircraft flying overalls. They're also a sweaty one. So finally, anyway, all turned out okay, excepting all the events had been cancelled because we're not sure of coming. But the wedding took place. And next morning, very bleary-eyed, got up at 5 in the morning, and 7 o'clock airborne, and I met Tippy in the air. We both landed together one after another on the ground at 7 o'clock. So that is the story, but it didn't end there. The ground had interviewed us that night, and on the SRE, and how the wedding went. I didn't feel as if I got married at all. I just said it picnic to me, and so that was it. Then, of course, the story goes that my wife kept following the ship everywhere. We didn't know the program. She was in Bombay one day, next day we were in Goa, the next day we were in Cochin, and she followed the ship everywhere in Dakota. But
there's a movie script, Srikant.
This is delightful.
And finally, I got leave after a month and a half of getting married.
So, isn't that lovely? I never get tired of listening to that. So, Sandeep, before we go to the audience, very quickly, I want to bring a little connection back to Mumbai of Operation X. Operation X was followed by the 4 Alpha,
Yes.
where 4 small ships went right up to Khulna, Chalna, Mongla and attacked. And one of the ships there was called INS Panvel.
Who would have thought, named after a small little sleepy town on the mainland Maharashtra, which is, by the way, getting its own international airport now. So
Yes.
let's hear it for Panvel.
So let's hear it from Panvel. Please tell them the story of
So,
Panvel.
Panvel, war breaks out on the 4th of December, and Commander Sammy Summons is not satisfied with carrying out the world's largest covert maritime warfare operation, and he decides to go over. And he takes his little gunboat flotilla led by the INS Panvel. He embarks on the INS Panvel, and he's followed by the 2 Bangladesh Navy ships, the Palash and the Padma. And the 3 of them go upriver, right up the Khulna River, like literally to the heart of East Pakistan. They navigate through all of these narrow waterways and channels, and they finally get there. They launch a gunboat raid. It's very unfortunate that there's a blue on blue there where the Indian Air Force straps them. They shoot up 2 of the Bangladesh craft, but the Panvel gets away. And it maneuvers, it picks up the survivors, and it comes back. And at one point, the INS Panvel has 3 Mahavir Chakras on board.
Yes.
That is Captain Samant, Commander Norona, Commander Norona, there's Chiman Singh, and there's something like 4 or 5 Veer Chakras. And this is a boat that is not even 100 tons.
Yeah.
It's a gunboat with 2 40-60s, and it's got a couple of mines, and that's it. And extraordinary people. A small little gunboat carrying this very remarkable crew, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and carries out the Indian Navy's only gunboat raid till date.
So, this is a ship whose size is probably length is less than this
A little
one.
longer than this room,
No.
perhaps.
And that has, I believe, pro rata wise, if you go
Yes.
by the 30 people that were there, probably the highest number of awards
Of all time, yes.
No?
Possibly after the
Shouldn't-
47.
Shouldn't a city like Mumbai, which has Panvel here, be remembering INS Panvel and its glorious exploits. You tell us, ladies and gentlemen, should that happen or not? And now we'll open ourselves to a couple of questions and comments, but please keep them short. Any questions to the panelists? Yes. Ramesh, to you. First team. You go.
I don't have a question as such. I just wanted to share a personal anecdote. So I have been living in Mumbai and I had the privilege of visiting Vikrant thrice during Navy Day celebrations, and I also visited the book launch of Sandeep sir. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
I have two questions, one for Admiral and one for Sandeep.
Louder.
Admiral sir, regarding this 71 war, I was a school kid at that time, so there were always these rumors about the Enterprise coming in. I mean, it was coming in, but there were rumors that even at schoolboy level, it could be schoolboy stuff, that the Navy has formed a special squadron if Enterprise comes in, and so on and so on. So how much of that is true? How much of it is
about the Enterprise? What's your question to Sandeep?
Question to Sandeep is whether Operation X was the basis for the Marcos later.
I think that's
two different things. The Americans did send the 7th Fleet in, led by the USS Enterprise.
No, I know that, but how would we tackle them?
How did we tackle Enterprise?
Whether there was, okay, let me be.
We left it to our partners.
So you answer
there
that other part because that's interesting. That's
So,
what
okay.
you
Was there
Marine
any
Commandos.
military plan to do so?
Right.
That one I'll ask you.
To tackle the
USS
7th Fleet.
No. You answer the Marcos.
The Marine Commandos. Okay, now my co-author Captain Samant made two recommendations at the end of Operation X. The first one was to beware of similar operations that we launched in East Pakistan being carried out against us in India by the Pakistanis. And the second recommendation that he gave in January of 1972 was to please raise a unit, a special forces unit for the Indian Navy. The government acted on that 14 years later. They created the Marine Commando Force. And the most important thing here is on the night of 26/11, when all seemed to be lost, where the police had been massacred, there was nobody literally to fight the 10 terrorists that had landed from Pakistan. The first armed response that came into the Taj that night was from the Marine Commando. It is the most extraordinary act of intervention. They saved, by their intervention, they saved 170 hotel guests at the chambers who would have otherwise been either held hostage or massacred. The toll would have been in the 500s or 600s, after 26/11. And here's the thing: how did the Marine Commandos get to where they did that night? Why were they deployed quickly? Because they had just come back from Wooler. They were being deployed there by the Navy in support of the Indian Army for the last 15 years or so. How did they get deployed there? You have someone amongst us here today, Admiral Shekhawat. He's the person 30 years back who took the decision to send the Marine Commandos to Jammu and Kashmir so that they could be battle inoculated. Now, taking that analogy a little further, Admiral Shekhawat was Captain Samant's executive officer on the INS Current. So that's the connection between both my books. And that tornado.
He's the last man you can accuse of ungentlemanly warfare. Sir, a quick word on the Enterprise, would you like to?
No, our intelligence had been given to our fleet in the captain of it. And the response would have been just a good morning. But what really happened was that Enterprise, as we learned later, had entered the Indian Ocean, but too late.
Yeah.
The war finished in 13 days, and nobody expected that to have happened. Normally it would take another 10 days more, and this is a normal thing. But it ended very fast, and I think everybody was surprised, and then so were the Americans. But I hear later on that Nixon, Kissinger had bypassed as chief of naval operations and started taking action on their own without taking the Navy into confidence, and therefore the indecision to say, not to say, come back, go back, carried on like that. So that's what it is.
So Ramesh, my surmise, this is only my surmise, of course, politically they took a bet that probably, like Sandeep said, we had our partners who would have come in. They took a bet probably that they would not come in too deep or they would not get too much involved. But I believe that one of the long-term impact of enterprise blackmail was India deciding to develop the nuclear submarine to act as a deterrent in future against such blackmail. It would probably never be minuted that way. That's my guess, that in some ways the fillip to the nuclear submarine program came out of the blackmail that we faced in 71, because it was the same Prime Minister who subsequently flagged off that. But that's simply my view. We have time for one last quick question. Very quick, short. No?
When Bangladesh
Yeah.
was created,
Yeah.
when Bangladesh was created finally as a different country, what kind of reaction Indian Navy got from the people of Bangladesh under Mujibur Rahman?
What sort of? I think you're waiting for one or.
Every year, till about 2 years ago, Bangladesh will invite the defense people who were taking part in the war, and we all went in batches. I went the first batch in 2012, and we were treated like VIPs. President Hasina was the president then, and we were paraded around as if we were really heroes. And I think this continued all the way through till about 2 years ago. And that may have recognized some sort of people.
In fact, the Indian military, Srikanth, in Bangladesh, they performed 2 rescue operations. They rescued the people of Bangladesh from the Pakistan army, and after the surrender, they rescued the Pakistan military from the Bangladesh people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Why you have been there, both of you. Ma'am, one of the things is that the Indian Navy, I mean, the Army and the Air Force did too, but the Indian Navy actually did a lot of reconstruction after the war too. We must not forget that. They did mine-sweeping operations of all the ports to keep. They brought back the port infrastructure which had been destroyed to bring the, and I think Captain Samant served as the chief of staff there. So I think a lot of these things happened even after the war. So it was good until recently. Yeah. Somnath, yes, quickly.
Just an observation. So sorry for the pause.
No, ladies and gentlemen, we acknowledge the very gracious presence of Admiral S.J. Singh, the Flag Officer commanding in South Western Naval Command. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Somnath.
The CNC is here, I won't take the time. You mentioned ungentlemanly warfare. The other linkage of that was a lot of the fighters that flew off the Vikrant were sourced from an ex-ungentlemanly warfare specialist, Otto Skorzeny, erstwhile German.
Arms dealer.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they were sourced from Germany.
Oh, arms
Yes.
dealer, he was a special forces.
Yes. So this is actually, I consider the 1971 war, just to take from where Somnath left off, the 1971 war is possibly one of the last wars of the 1945, of the Second World War. Because a lot of the people who did all the planning, especially the Mukti Bahini operations and all that, they were all people who had fought with the OSS in the Second World War and all that. Inder Gill, General Inder Gill,
yes.
was a remarkable guy.
Yes.
He's never written a book, I mean, such a tragedy, but Inder Gill was the person who actually drew up the op directives for the Mukti Bahini training, because this is all that we had done through the Second World War. So in that sense,
And I
71
think
was one
they
of
were
the last.
very practical too. They didn't
Yes.
let any ideological or any other consideration come in the way of
Yes.
beefing up quickly. So I think you make a very, very valuable point there. So ladies and gentlemen, I think we have come to the very end of this session. Thank you, Navy and the nation. Brilliant effort, 71 war, both overt and covert. We have one person who's actually part of that operation, another one who has seen it very closely and written about it for the first time. And I think this war in many ways was the Navy's finest hour. It gave us equities to be there on the high table with our two sister services, which is why you had Admiral Krishnan in the surrender photograph. And I think the Navy has not looked back after that. Those subsequent part of that is what we'll be discussing in the next session with Admiral S.J. Singh. Thank you very much, audience, for being here. Thank you to our give a big hand to our. So we're going to continue immediately after this. Continue to remain seated. The fireside chat is going to start almost immediately as soon as we give the goodie bag to our panelists. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Sandeep. Just jump up for a photograph in front.
This way, sir. Thanks.